Hey everybody, what is going on? It is your boy Izzo33, welcoming you back to the Anarchy Analysis Prediction Series. We're back for the World's Quarterfinals today, which are being held in Paris, which is still the closest I'll ever get to going to a World Final, thanks to botters and scalpers ruining it for the rest of us. Regardless of that, we've got 4 games on our docket, our beautiful docket filled with LCK, LPL teams, and then the luck of a draw at 1 LCS team. So strap on in as we begin the road to the finals once again, as we predict our matchup of the week. Our matchup of the week sees the 2 first seeds from the LCK and the LPL facing off in a very early fashion here in the knockout stages of Worlds. It's Bilibili Gaming taking on Hanwha Life Esports. It's a bit of a brawl, as we've covered HLE yesterday at the time of recording against Fly, and we saw such a chaotic matchup. The ups and downs of game 1 and then one decisive fight ended it in favour of HLE. Whereas the second game, they got snowballed to death. And then the third game was pure dominance and a masterclass of pushing tempos. They're going up against Bilibili Gaming, who we haven't actually covered yet at Worlds, which is kind of surprising to me considering the fact that this team is considered a favourite. They're one of 2 teams that we're yet to cover, and we're only going to be covering BLG, unfortunately, for this stage of the tournament. And this best of 5, I want to focus in on that top lane. Doran versus Bin. It's a masterclass of top laners. Doran, the less known, I think, in Western culture as a top laner, compared to Bin, who is just quote-unquote Giga Bin, as he is portrayed. The man is an absolute monster on carries, whereas Doran doesn't get the same credit, even though he is a monster in his own right. I really want to focus in on that matchup and how the rest of the teams basically bolster that top lane to get these aggressive sort of trades and favouring their teams, because we saw in the HLE series against Fly, Peanut constantly put pressure onto Bwipo, and it gave Doran the advantage and control over the lane to then push for victories. In the other side of it, I want to see how BLG, whether it's Shun in the jungle or Wei, whoever they bring in, realistically speaking, how would they deal with the pressure that will be put on topside onto Bin? That is the name of the game, and I want to see how HLE kind of battle against it. Sorry, BLG battle against it. But as a whole, this should be a very solid matchup between 2 first seeds. We've seen how both teams do against G2 and how they basically dumpstered the European team. Yikes. This time, in a full 5-game series, I think we're going to see blows and punches being thrown. I don't think it'll go all the way to 5, I think it'll be a 3-1. But the 3-1, to me, will go in favour of HLE. BLG at this tournament has kind of struggled as of far. I do think HLE has had their ups and downs as well. But as a whole, I think that HLE just will get the better of BLG and take the victory in this matchup. So let's get on schedule with the actual first matchup of the quarterfinals. It's LNG taking on Weibo. It's an interesting matchup, one of which not many people were expecting LNG to be the 3-0 team in. Let's be honest, I think, considering Weibo weren't expected to go 3-0, I don't think anyone expected LNG to. And we're here with LNG being dominant at Worlds. They're certainly showcasing a lot of strength. You got to give it up to their bot lane, performing well, performing perfect throughout the Swiss stage. And here against Weibo, who's been very up, very down, losing out against certain teams that maybe they could have beat, but they've been there. They're always a consistent performer at Worlds. Both teams are, for Christ's sake. I think these two are the most consistent teams at the World Championship for many years in terms of performing and getting here, even if they're not the champions of their region, which doesn't happen much for these two rosters. Regardless of that, we're coming into this matchup with only one of them being able to advance. I think that we'll see a full 5-game series, and we've got to realistically think about this as this is probably going to be an LNG win. I think 3-2. Overall, they'll lose a couple of games here, because as a whole, I don't think LNG have been tested at Worlds just yet. The competition they've faced hasn't been that fine-tuned. I think both teams faced off against Fnatic and beat them, if I'm correct in thinking. Again, there's been a lot of best of threes, there's been a lot of action that I've not had time to watch, but to be honest, these two rosters, they've got names. Scout versus Zarahu, just a featured matchup overall, and I personally think that, as I knock things off, it'll be a absolute brawl, and one that I think will go in favour of LNG. We are halfway through our predictions, and we get to another team we haven't covered yet at Worlds, and it will be the last team that we won't have covered. It's Top Esports taking on T1. This is going to be an interesting one because T1, they've struggled this year, as I've said the past few Swiss stage predictions. Here against a team who have done considerably well in their own region, second place overall I believe for top, against obviously BLG, who have been just the strongest LPL team all year and for a few years now. I do think that this is realistically a bit more of a difficult matchup and kind of the tester for T1 to see whether or not they still have the capabilities to challenge for the World Championship. They've got the players who've literally just won the Worlds last year. Can they do it again? Because this is where it matters most. Best of fives. No second chances. This is Top Esports, a team that's got world champions on it. It's going to be a difficult matchup overall for T1, but is the deck being stacked up too high against them, considering what they are? Not necessarily. I think we'll get a full 5-game series, but I'm giving it to top. I think that the Chinese killers aren't going to be online just yet. I think that they'll take it 5, but there'll be something called map plays that just cash T1 out. Top have been very good at just pushing advantages this year, and as a whole, I think that 369 hasn't been challenged in that top lane either. He's just been content, happy farming. Renekton's back in the meta. He can play Cassante if he needs to. Ornn's there. He's got comfort, and when he's on comfort, top typically do well, which is kind of why you have to say that this is probably going to them in this overall best of 5. And lastly, we have Gen G taking on FlyQuest. I'm going to keep this one pretty short and sweet. FlyQuest have done very well. I'd say got very lucky to make it here to quarters, considering essentially NA avoided all of the LPL and LCK teams to get here when it comes to the final bracket matchup. that's realistically put them in this situation where they've avoided a lot of stiff competition. Now, don't get me wrong, they did phenomenal against HLE. They had ups and downs in the first game. They realistically could have won it. But the second game was dominant. And it comes down to how FlyQuest realistically have been able to play whatever they want, whatever they really like. They've been unpredictable in drafts. They've brought the first Nunu in so many years to the World Championship. And they brought Ivan into the jungle. These picks that aren't considered meta are being played by them. And they're finding success because, let's be honest, it counters the meta picks. They're playing things that aren't necessarily practiced against. And teams are struggling to deal with it. And as such, they bring this element that HLE might not be used to or ready to play against. Now, oh, not HLE, Gen G won't be able to play against. Now, Gen G took a whistle-stop tour through Swiss stage. The other team to go 3-0. To be honest, I think most people really expected them to do well. They've made it like 8 straight years in a row. 4 World Finals. Quarterfinals, I should say. But right now, let's talk about how I see this matchup shaping up. It's probably gonna be a very explosive jungle matchup. Inspired versus Canyon. It's 2 junglers that are just probably at their peak of the game. Inspired, winning MVP in multiple regions, is certainly showing up, and I'm really looking forward to how these two teams match up. I do think Fly's bot lane is their weakest area of the map, and while Quad didn't really show up against HLE, he wasn't necessarily needed to. I do think that Pays is performing phenomenally, isn't being tested, and is just a goat paired alongside Lehens. And then in the mid lane, it's Chovy. Chovy's probably gonna lane kingdom Quad, unfortunately for the LCS. So while I want to say 3-2 Gen G, I think it's gonna be a swift 3-0. I think the LCK Giants will topple the LCS. And the last pillar of Western League of Legends will fall. Because let's be honest, half of FlyQuest are European. We're taking them as our own. But yeah, I think that it's probably going to be a pretty fun matchup. I do think that it won't be a long one and will be ended quite quickly. So that's why I've gone 3-0, and yeah, all 4 predictions are in the book now. Semi-finals awaits us. Obviously, we will be live streaming, presumably on Saturday, because I haven't got anything else to do. The quarterfinals live stream, the VOD review of the full 5 games, if it goes that, of the BLG series. So, with that said and done, thank you very much for joining me. If you have enjoyed this, leave a like down below. Subscribe if you're new around here if you want to. And I will see you guys next time. Peace out.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big